discussing the next normal. Last one was about what next and the new normal. So this is about kind of what's coming next. I think it would be fair to say a lot of people's mindsets have now started to shift through that change curve, if you want to get theoretical about it. And now we're ready to move into a different phase. So we've got an amazing panel. Today we've got Stacey from Smyle, waving with a lovely logo in the background. She's responsible for driving employee wellbeing efforts at Smyle. A few hundred employees. We got Nikki Love, who's in your bright pink t-shirt there. Hello, Nikki. We'll tell you a bit more in a bit, but she's done some pretty crazy adventure endurance events in the past and has got one coming up as well. And Aidy, Drummey, last but not least, responsible for group communications at QA. Hello, Aidy. And has been leading on the wellbeing side as well and managing lots of conversations at QA and a bigger company in terms of number of employees. So we've got a few different bases covered, but before we dive in, I'll ask the panelists how they're doing in a few seconds. I'll also ask you guys, how are you doing? Let's do it now. If you want to use the chat function at the bottom there, just put in how you're feeling right now. Could be tired, as we hinted at before. I think maybe a bit bored of being at home. You could be feeling really good. You could be feeling a bit in the middle. Whatever that is, let's use the chat. And while you're thinking about that, we're just going to do a bit of an energizer. So if you want to stand up, if you can't stand up, just sit down. We're just going to roll our shoulders back. Get a bit of oxygen into the lungs. Much better than sitting in that posture all the time. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Arms above the head and down, up, down, up, down, up. Nice. We're going to breathe in and out. So 3 more. 1 more. Nice. If you're standing up, just going to move your feet around. I'm going to move my wrists around in a circle. I'm just going to freestyle for the last 5 seconds. Get a bit more energy into the body. Beautiful, Aidy. Beautiful, Nikki. You're dancing. 3, 2, 1, and relax. All right. Nice. Anyone did come in a bit late there. Those of you with cameras on, well done. I enjoyed watching as much as I enjoyed doing it. Okay, so without further ado, we've got a bit more blood flowing, we've got a bit more energy in, we're ready to listen, we're ready to learn. My first question is going to be a really simple one to everyone in the group. If you've not put in a chat yet, how are you feeling? Please do. I will start with Stacey. You're in the middle of my screen right now.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm okay, thank you. Nice to see everyone this afternoon. I think I'm doing as okay as I can be. There's obviously no question that everyone is going through a time of change, and I definitely have had a wave of emotions over the last 4 months or 4.5 months. I do live by the motto though to try not to worry about what if situations or situations that haven't yet happened. So I'm just taking each day as it comes really, and so far I'm feeling okay today.
Thank you. How about yourself, Nikki? And the reason we do this, by the way, is because we so often talk about this oxygen mask analogy. We've got to put our own oxygen mask on first before we can help other people. So, Nikki, how are you doing?
I'm feeling nervous, and I'm trying to flip that into excited. So I'm, in theory, going back to work very soon, back to my job, the job that I've chosen to do. And yeah, it's that nervousness of what's about to come. But actually, I think that I'm quite lucky that I'm going to be doing my own thing whilst everybody else is having to deal with what's going on around, the changing guidelines. And so I'm going to be preoccupied with what I'm going to be doing. So
we'll hear a bit more about that in a second as well. Aidy, you're looking out. How are you?
Just looking outside, appreciating the trees. I feel tired. You know, Chris, I know we've spoken quite a bit, so you probably understand why I feel a little tired. But also, I'm now starting to feel a little optimistic for the future. You know, as a business, we've made some big changes, and we're now in what we're calling a reset phase. So although I'm feeling tired and I need to find some energy to get us through the next phase, I'm feeling optimistic about it.
Thank you. Thanks guys for being so honest as well, because sometimes like a little bit of vulnerability up front can help other people understand and share their own situations as well. And to be honest, that's kind of where I'd like to start. We've got a real mix of people on this call from different size companies. Generally, we're in the realm of HR or talent, or in some way responsible for employee well-being. So obviously that's our focus today. But to begin with, I suppose a question, Aidy, if you want to continue on, just sharing a bit more about the journey in the last 3, 4, 4.5 months, just to give some context before we get into some more specific questions.
Yeah, no problem. And I think I'm sure you'll all agree it's been some journey, right? I'm sure personally and professionally we've all probably faced different challenges and seen different elements of positivity. You know, we as a business we opened our doors again on Monday, which was really interesting. I work for a learning organisation, a tech and digital learning organisation. So our clients are learners and students. And after 120 days, we welcome back learners to our training centres. So it was a very strange day. It was a day that was very welcomed, because it was a bit like, yes, we're here, we survived, our business has survived, and we have people that want to come back. But also a day of nervousness, as Nikki was saying. You know, there's a nervousness around, okay, so have we got this right? Are we doing the right thing? How do people feel when they're coming back into our business? And that's not only customers, that's also our people. You know, how do they feel about coming back to the workplace? What I will say is, you know, we're not making anyone come back to the workplace. There are some roles within our business that unfortunately can't be delivered from home, so they will need to come back to workplace. But we're making sure that we're taking the right steps and really thinking about how people are feeling. So a big day when we think about the 120 days that have passed. And you know, if we think about that emotional curve, I can guarantee you, back on the 16th of March, I was most definitely in denial. And this was not happening. This was not happening to the world. This was not happening to the business I work for. This was not happening to me. And you know, I think I hit nearly every emotion, because there was anger. And then ultimately I started to accept that actually, well, this is what we're faced with, and we can actually make a difference during this time and do some really good things for our people. And I think when you're presented with a crisis, you will be remembered for the way you handled it. And I think that's really important. And I think it would be really fair to say, you know, I have a colleague on this call, but it will be really fair to say that our people will emerge from this crisis, and our people will 100% believe that we handled it and we did the best we could. And I also believe that our customers will.
Thank you, Aidy. I mean, there's so much in there. I'd imagine a lot of people that really resonates with, especially when you consider people on this call are proactively going out and searching for information on how to look after people. So definitely, I think it'd be fair to say that made a lot of sense. Nikki, when Aidy said nervousness, it reminded me of what you said at the beginning there. And I wonder if you could just share a bit more about your next steps, your journey up to now, and what's coming next.
Well, I'm coming in apparently as an expert in overcoming obstacles and staying strong. Now, I was supposed to be running across Australia this time, and obviously that changed. So I had to deal with all that years of planning, and everything got put on hold. So I had to keep thinking about what the ultimate goal is, and then look for opportunities that have come up. And this is what I'm about to do now, is that, okay, I haven't got to Australia, but I am staying strong mentally, I stayed strong physically, and now I'm going to do an alternative, still maintaining what it is that my ultimate goal, which was to run adventures. So instead of running across Australia, I'm going to do the same equivalent. So it was going to be 2,500 miles in 63 days across Australia. So it was an attempt at a world record. And I'm transferring it, and I'm going to do it all on a treadmill. So it's a little bit different, but it's also very much the same. And I'm now sort of focusing my efforts on that and working out this new normal, and how I can still do what I do in these changed circumstances.
Love it. I mean, it's the reason I'm so excited you're on is because it's such a clear metaphor as well, I suppose, for coming through stages of change, not without setbacks and obstacles and having to adjust. So Stacey, maybe we can eloquently bring you now in to talk a little bit more about Smyle and how you've been doing things and the challenges that you've overcome so far.
Yeah, I think there's been various challenges, especially at different times, and I think each challenge has taken a front seat at different parts of what we call the journey. I think initially the home working was a big challenge. I think that it was hard to just try and ensure that you're not living to work at home and trying to segregate that from these are your working hours and this is your home time. And I think that's quite hard to do when you're also feeling that because you're working from home that you need to be available the whole time. So there are no set hours. You would go to work 8 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever that looks like. But being at home, there's a sort of pressure that you feel that, okay, well, I'm at home and I'm right by my laptop, so I need to be available at 6 a.m. in the morning. I need to be available to 10 o'clock at night. And I think that was quite hard for us and our people to start with, and trying to get them to find that balance and giving them that switch off period, because without that, the productivity would have just it could have just dipped. I think also it kind of links to what we've termed as Zoom fatigue, where you can't meet people face to face, so it's constant Zoom calls, and I think very quickly you have to learn how to deal with that. So personally, I'd booked out times in my diary to have like a lunch break, so then that meant people couldn't book things in for me, and it gave me like time away from the screen, whether that was going for a walk or whatever that may be. I did actually read a really good book by Sheryl Sandberg called Option B, and it's all about, I don't know if anyone's read it, but it's all about if your plan A or your first option doesn't work and it doesn't go to plan, there is always an option B, and it's how you kind of channel that into like new directions and how you live your best life in that option B. And I thought that was a really, really good book, and it really resonated with me because it kind of links to this scenario, but also so many situations where your first plan doesn't go to plan. I think as Smyle as a whole, we're now at the situation as of a few weeks ago that we have started to have people come back to our Hertford office, and obviously that's a challenge in itself. And linking into what was said earlier, you just want to make sure you're doing the right thing and know that your people feel confident and comfortable in that, and believe that you've done the right thing for them and that everyone is as safe as they can be.
So it's interesting picking up on what that plan B looks like, I suppose, because it's definitely fair to say that we've all got good intentions here. And I think 2 months ago and 1 month ago, we asked a poll about when people going back to the office, and I think 52% of people said no idea. And then last month we're thinking about, okay, getting a bit more deliberate on employee wellbeing and making choices. So I suppose, like, where are we now? We had a conversation last week with a marketing company about their move towards being remote first. And I wonder now, Aidy, if I could loop you back in on what's coming next. I suppose it feels like we're in a more deliberate phase now and feeling perhaps more optimistic. That option B.
Yeah, the option B is, I think we're all now in a position to craft option B to work for ourselves. So you know, it's in our hands. We're now in a position where we can set a new normal. And your point there, Chris, with regards to, you know, how are people feeling? You know, we've constantly been surveying our people. We employ 2,500 people across the country, across 25 different locations. And 4 weeks ago, we surveyed them, and the biggest driver for people wanting to come back to the office, which was 64% of people, was for social skills. Okay, to be with teammates, to be with colleagues. So that's the biggest driver. If we look at the question, we simply ask the question, you know, what would you like the new normal to be? Yeah, so the options were to go back to an office, to continue working remotely, or to combine best of both worlds, as we put it. And, you know, 70% of our people want the best of both worlds. So what we're doing, and as I said, on Monday, we actually opened one of our centres in London, but we are approaching this in 3 phases. So as of the 3rd of August, we will start with phase 1. So we will have 3 phases now of returning to the office right up until the end of this year. Now phase 1, we're not making anybody come back to the office. We're simply saying, out of a select number of offices, these are the locations that are now deemed to be COVID secure, and we've put all of the safety measures and requirements in place, and they will be open. However, you can't just turn up, right? Because that would cause a problem. So we're saying that they're open to bring teams together. So if there's a team meeting that actually would really benefit from collaborating face to face, or if there's a team that would really benefit from a morale perspective to see each other, then we'd love to see you back in the office in a safe way. So that's phase 1. And then we will move into phase 2, where we will start to see particular teams where we've identified it's more efficient for them to be back into the office. So we will have conversations with them and make sure that they fully understand, and make sure we understand, okay, so what were the challenges that you experienced at home? What are the benefits of being in the office? And then we will start to identify almost 2 sets of teams that can completely work from home remotely, and there will be no change, or teams that actually we can see some added benefit for them being in the office. So that will be phase 2. And then as we approach phase 3, which will be towards the end of the year, the beginning of 2021, we're hoping will be very much where we can start to blend old world and new world, and create our own space. So we can move to ways of working where people are choosing what works best for me. When do I need to go into the office? When do I need to see my teammates? I'm working on this particular project, and actually I want to go and see Chris, Nikki and Stacey, because it's going to be more effective for us to collaborate.
Love that. Thank you. I think one thing we really try and do as well is to share practical tips and things that people can do off the back of this. So that's spot on. Nikki, I'd love to get your thoughts in a bit on motivation and working through setbacks as well. Stacey, I just wonder, building on what Aidy said, what about Smyle? I'll come back to you in a second, Nikki, if that's all right.
Yeah, I think it's very similar to what Aidy was saying. So interestingly, we also sent out like an anonymous survey around the same sort of questions around the future and what you would like it to be. And majority of the responses were around seeing colleagues, catching up, being face to face again, which I think really demonstrated the strong culture, but also the importance of having a strong culture and building that community, because I think that's what the core is of any business. And so a few weeks ago we've opened the Hertford office, but again, exactly the same as what Aidy's saying. No one's forced to come in. So anyone who's in that office right now have chosen to come in. And again, it's a mixture of, because I need to be there, because I need to work collaboratively. There's a project going on, so it works best if we're all in the office together. And then we will move on to the next phase, which hopefully in the next month or so, looking at, okay, so what teams do need to be in, and what does that look like, and also keeping the measures that we've already put in place, like the social distancing, the sanitizer stations, the cohort groups, and who's working, team A, team B are working this day, and things like that. And then within our final phase, which we have again sent out a survey on, is agile working. I think more so now than ever, people really want that home life balance, and people have only demonstrated that even roles that maybe were questionable before, we can work from home in some form, in some capacity. That is doable. So I think having that as the final stage of the balance of, okay, so these people can go in on these days, these people can go in on these days, or what actually works for the individual, what every individual, whilst we're all going through this same pandemic, every individual has got their own story and what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And I think that's been really important in our planning procedure of all of this.
Yeah, and it starts with listening as well, I suppose. People like Minesh and Co have been on all three of these. I think it won't be a surprise to see that listening is coming up as a theme. So on that note, I'm re-looking at the chat at the moment, and there's a lot of words that are positive: happy, good now, tired, and listless, maybe restless, bored, tired. And one of the themes that we've seen in companies recently is like a lack of motivation and energy. Nikki, maybe it's a good time to loop you back in. Talk about motivation, energy, and anything else that came up whilst the other guys were sharing their stories.
So I was trying to compare what I do to a business, and we have the same thing, which is we both have an end goal, which is a business wants to be a strong and profitable business, and I want to finish my challenge, and to be able to do that, I have a plan. But the plans never go to plan. So I have to have these other things, which is being flexible, being adaptable, being resilient, and still maintaining that focus on the end goal, but not being so blinkered that I'm not looking for ways around obstacles that come up. Yeah, so the motivation, that is key to being able to do what I do, and it will be key for people wanting to go back to work or be within a work environment, and ultimately it's the ethos of the company. If they feel strong with the ethos, and the ethos is visible, and it's acceptable, and people say I'm not comfortable with this, but can I do this? That's going to sort of bring it all together, and people are going to want to sort of be part of it and continue to keep going with the company.
Yeah. And what about yourself, Nikki? Because I know we went for a run around Richmond Park once.
Yeah.
I remember quite a lot of what you shared, actually, because it's quite powerful. Because we're talking about employee well-being, but again, at the beginning we talked about the oxygen mask analogy. I wonder if you've got any tips or tricks that individuals, like people on this call, can use for themselves to, if they're feeling a bit low on motivation or a bit low energy, like, is there anything you'd share that could help?
Oh, I don't know. Were you pointing me in some direction, Chris? Oh, no, you've thrown me there. Not sure.
I wasn't pre-prepared at all. But I mean, it's an open question, really. Aidy and Stacey too, like, interested to hear your thoughts on where you are with motivation and energy and performance, because actually if we're talking with clients, for example, about going remote first, performance and productivity has to be a consideration during that as well. And so if we're moving towards a more stable foundation now and phasing into 2021 where we're going to be set up, like, where does motivation and performance fit? What are your considerations around those things? Aidy, you go. Stacey.
Yeah. I think it all fits with very much plan B, and now starting to set those. Now I want to say fortunate enough that we're going through a reset phase. We're probably not quite lucky, because what that's meant, whilst we've been going through these challenges, that we have actually had to resize our business. So we've made some changes to the way our business looks, to the number of people that are employed by our business, within our business. So it has been a challenging time, not only due to COVID-19, but also with the significant changes that as a business we have had to make to make sure that we have a sustainable future. So we're at that phase of reset, which, as I say, I'm optimistic about, but why we're here, it has not been the best of stories. So what that means is then we now need to look at, okay, those individuals who are left behind, And what I mean by that is when you lose people through redundancy and so on, you will have a group of people who are left behind, and there will be a number of challenges that they will then face, because naturally they've lost colleagues. Okay, they've said goodbye to colleagues. So we want to make sure that we're looking after those individuals that have stayed with us, and making sure that things like the emotions of guilt, you know, why did I keep my job, and why did so and so have to leave, and that's when motivation, performance, reward and recognition and well-being, you use those as the foundations to start to grow that team again, because the team will be in a space at reset where there may be, you know, trust has been lost, that enthusiasm and optimism may be at its lowest, because we're going back to the beginning, so to speak, and we're now going to begin a new journey. So you will need to use motivation and really looking at what drives individuals, make them feel valued, and make them feel that they want to be part of this next phase. And that's what we're going at the moment. If you look across our business, there are some individuals who are feeling really unsure. Yeah, why unsure? I think it's if I was totally honest with you, I think when I speak to individuals, that they're grateful that they have a job at the moment, but they're also feeling unsure. And they're also in the back of their mind thinking, well, I've lost these colleagues. I've lost these colleagues, and also I'm here, so actually my workload is going to increase as well. And so there's loads of different emotions that you're currently trying to explore. And I think through performance and motivation and well-being and reward and recognition, that's where you can really start to get the best of your people. And what we're doing now is we're working towards a reset conference. So on the 3rd of September, we will hold a company-wide conference where it's a new day, it's a new beginning, and we're going to make some really some real positive changes around how our culture and what we expect of our people and what it's like to work at QA. So some of those things will include our wellbeing agenda and putting a stake in the ground to say, do you know what, this is at the top of the agenda. The other piece is around diversity and inclusion. This is a new day, and diversity and inclusion is at the top of our agenda. We're also going to be launching a very large reward and recognition program. So this is all to do with driving performance and motivating our people to get the best out of them and get them to stay. Chris, I don't know whether I've just answered your question.
A whole bunch of questions, Aidy.
I was listening to my response as it was just coming out of my mouth, thinking, what are you actually talking about?
Oh, no, that's cool.
So I hope that's clear. And if anyone wants me to elaborate on that or actually try and answer the question separately, please let me know. And
I could see your brain bringing it back to the original point, and along the way you scattered specific things like that conference. I think is a really cool idea, because it's about injecting certainty and milestones when there's a complete lack of them. So yeah, Stacey, I wonder what you'd add, and just thinking about the chat as well, there was on motivation, there's some really nice stuff about like starting with why and individuals having reasons, and Chris, you made a nice point there as well. So Chris, I'll ask you a question in a bit, but Stacey, over to you.
Sure. No, the only thing I would add is I think really people can take this time in many ways, but you can either step forward for growth or step back to safety. And I think if people take learnings from this whole situation and I guess reevaluate, like, what is important to me, what are my motivators, and you may actually find that how you answer that question now to how you would have answered that question 4 months ago, for example, would be very different. And I think to know that it's okay to feel a certain way is a good thing. And it's okay that your motivation may be different now to how it was 4 months ago, but it's how you then take that on board, acknowledge that, and then instill it into what you're next doing and your next moves. I think linking into what you said earlier, Chris, I think also for the motivation aspect, I think a huge part of that is listening. That you can make so many assumptions, and from a business perspective, you can make loads of decisions and changes and things like that. But I think unless you really actually listen to your people and understand how they're feeling, and not basing it on assumption that everyone's feeling the same way. I think that plays a part into people truly feeling valued and feel that they aren't just a number in the game. They are a person, and they have value, and they add their value in whatever way, just like the next person does, in a different form.
I love that. I love that. It's also a good cue actually to listen to everyone else on the call. Chris Truman, if your daughter hasn't photobombed and you'd be happy to share.
Yeah.
You were going to
come.
talent.
Sorry, say that again, Chris.
Over to you. Yeah, if you want to fire a question at the panel, I'm more than happy to open up to the group now, guys. If you've got any questions, have a think. You can put it in the chat, and I'll come to you and put you in the spotlight.
Yeah, great, thanks. Hi, panel. Yeah, it was about how important you saw workplace well-being to talent acquisition strategies, and how they may then have been affected by COVID, basically.
So I'm thinking this could be a Stacey, this could be an Aidy.
Sorry, Chris, do you mind just repeating it?
Yeah, no problem. So how important do you see workplace well-being, employee well-being, to talent acquisition strategies, and how your opinions may have been changed by COVID?
See, I think that it's always been a huge role, but I think obviously more so now than ever. If anything, it's just highlighted how prevalent it is and how important it is. At Smyle, we try to push as much out as we can on like our social media channels. So based on anything that we've delivered. So for example, recently we had conducted some workshops for managers and employees in managing change and how to deal with that, and ways to overcome that. And again, like for example, our intention is to train people up on mental health first aid as another example. So we would always try and shout out about that internally and externally, which I think is a huge, huge attraction to candidates. I think it's really important for them to also believe that they work for a company who really, truly values well-being. And I think from an interview perspective, it's, yes, you want to find the right person for your business, but I think actually candidates have a lot more power now, in the sense that they know what they want. All of this has demonstrated that the well-being aspects, the working from home aspects, the work-life balance aspects, and I think it's a really good chance for them to also use this interview as an interview for them to interview the company, and make sure that they truly are backing the well-being, I guess, the well-being program, or whatever you like to call it. And especially if that's demonstrated by like senior management, leaders, directors. I think if you've got that backing and their presence of it, there's a lot more engagement naturally.
Nice. Aidy, I'm interested if you've got anything to add. Equally, Chris, as well, I'm interested in your thoughts too. I know you asked the question, but...
Sure, yeah, I mean, from my perspective immediately, I think Stacey is absolutely spot on. I mean, I think it was, as a sort of a real element of talent acquisition strategy, becoming extremely important before COVID anyway, because I think it was a very clear separator for businesses to really identify themselves with top talent, probably, and differentiate themselves. I think post-COVID, it's gone, and I use terminology, Chris, with you personally, which I won't use today, but it's gone to a totally different level. You know, we're seeing a totally different trend in the marketplace now when we speak to, you know, the best talent out there, but actually kind of everybody, in that their drivers now are less likely to be salary and location and, you know, industry specific stuff, and far more likely to be, okay, well, what are these guys going to do to look after me? You know, what am I going to feel when I'm an employee of this business, and how do they attempt to make that something that's quite unique? But actually, most importantly, is what you're telling me about this well-being strategy, i.e. me as a consultant or them as a direct employer, is it legitimate? And Stacey just hit the nail on the head with that. You know, it's the most dangerous thing as we come out of all of this, is to try and play at employee well-being, but not execute it. because I think, you know, ultimately you'll see people not only avoid you like the plague from externally, but probably migrate from internally. So yeah, it's Stacey was spot on, quite frankly.
Love that. I'm wondering now, because we've got so many questions, Nikki, I think there's one that you might be able to weigh in on from Minesh. We're talking about being adaptable and coping mechanisms and moving forward and adjustment. Minesh, if you'd be happy to fire that at Nikki and then perhaps Aidy as well.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Yeah, it's just, I find it more and more now in the last 4 weeks, there seems to have been this cliff that everyone seems to get over at the start of July, where everyone was doing well with all the new things coming into their lives, but now it's just, I want to go back to the way things were. I want to go back to normal. And I'm a little bit more realistic in knowing that, you know, normal is sometimes what's in front of you in the situation right now, but also how you can learn from the current experience and what was good about the past to go through. It's quite difficult. So my team, I'll give as an example, you know, they've all got different, you know, drivers. I think it's been said a few times. You know, some people actually don't want to go back to the way things were because they've experienced a new lease of life. Some have realized that this current way of working is not for them at all. How do you balance that out so that, you know, you are working as a team, but you also have to be very, very specific with each individual person, because we don't all feel the same way and the same positivity about the future.
Positivity, Nikki, I think that's your ballpark, isn't it?
Okay, so that whole word normal, we're always growing and we're always changing, so it's always a new normal, and if you accept that, then things are going to be so much easier as you move along. Trying to go backwards is in that same word, backwards. So being comfortable with things changing, understanding that you can cope because you've managed this far, so a few more changes, you're going to cope. So always looking back and reflecting on and pulling out the strengths so that you are confident to go forward and take that step into the next different bits and pieces. So it's being brave to keep moving forward, because if you don't do that, then you simply won't grow. Yeah, it's a confidence thing, and part of that is also the changing. I mentioned at the start that I was nervous. Being able to change that, flip it to become excited, because, or you know, changing the normal, the nervous, which with a scared connotation, to excited, because they both feel very similar. That's how I get through my things, because I do some stupid and scary things, but yeah, I just try and flip it to a more positive. I'm going to be better. I'm going to grow from this. This is going to be good for me.
I do remember that. I love that you brought up reflection. I think John Garland on the call will as well, because we've been doing a leadership course which involves like just 10 minutes of self-reflection at the end of each day, and it's then tuning into the emotion that you highlighted, Nikki, and flipping it into something usable. I also remember when we ran around Richmond, you shared the tip about I am Nikki, I am the type of person who ... which I thought was pretty cool, and I have used that myself. So yeah, Aidy, you're the type of person who has an opinion on this type of thing.
I think the new normal is and going back to normal is a strange phrase, and one I've heard quite a bit, and I personally couldn't think of anything worse. Now that's my own opinion, right? I think we can learn a lot from what we've seen over the last 120 days, and there's one thing for sure: we're never going to get that back again unless we grab onto it and make it part of our new normal. But to the point of your question there, and something Stacey's mentioned several times, is around listening. Let's listen to our people. Everyone is going to be different, and everyone will have a different opinion, will feel in a different way to you know, what's happened and what we're moving into. So if we can listen and be as flexible as possible, I think that's the right thing to do. And when you're given that flexibility and you're listening to people, that's when you start to get the best out of them. You know, I'm sure we all know, and there's a complete link here to diversity and inclusion as well, right? None of us are the same. We're all very, very different. We have different motivators, different drivers. Our DNA is completely different. So if we listen, which can be challenging when you have big teams to accommodate everyone, but listen and provide that flexibility, that's when magic can happen, because you will get the best of people. Some people will be driven by well-being and how their company looks after their mental and physical well-being. Some people will be driven by compensation and bonus. So I think this is going to allow us as a society and as a workforce to be more flexible, and not to have blanket approaches of saying every member of staff will work 9 till 5. Every member of staff will take a lunch break between 12 and 2. Said nobody. You know, so I think why can parents or guardians, for example, not have their required their break, their lunch break at a time that suits them for whoever they have at home, whether they're caring for somebody or it's young children. So this blanket approach needs to be binned. We need to do a bit of listening and show some flexibility. And then once again, in terms of the other point there with regards to attracting talent, people are going to be biting at your vacancies and opportunities, because they want to work for a company that gets them and understands them. And I think that's how we will now move into post-COVID.
I love that. And I know you've been hosting quite a few focus groups as well, Aidy. So like when we're talking about listening, like we're properly talking about listening face to face, aren't we? And that does obviously come with some brave conversations and not easy conversations. But then if you follow up on it, I think it builds the trust. So Laura Scott, maybe this is a good time to ask your question, because Stacey, you might have something to add on culture as well, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to know, like, what have people been doing to keep the culture strong while people have been remote, keeping that team spirit?
Go first. Stacey, is that all right?
Yeah, of course. So at Smyle, we've launched a few things. One of them, what we have called it At Home with Smyle. So this has taken place instead of what we used to do in previous years at summer at Smyle, where you had face-to-face get-togethers. So with our at home with Smyle, it's all around we call them Smilers, but our people's own hobbies and interests. And over the next couple of months, we have set up a whole timetable whereby anyone in the agency can sign up to one of these sessions, which are actually hosted by one of our staff members. And it's on a range of topics. So we have HIIT workouts, we have meditation sessions, cooking sessions, like yoga sessions. But what's really nice about it is that instead of where we have done, and I'm sure we will continue to do, instead of having different companies come in and give talks and things like that, we're actually celebrating your own people. And that's a really nice, I guess, uplift for everyone, that it's celebrating your people, joining that together, learning different things. And actually, interestingly, we didn't know about half of the hobbies or interests or side hustles that people were doing before this, because really no one had really actually asked or had got people involved in that well-being side, which actually can be from an internal perspective. It's not always, okay, well-being, what should we do? Right, we need to get this person in, this person in, this person in. It actually is quite close to home, and probably more so than people would believe.
Is that helpful, Laura? Okay, three clap emojis, I'll take
Yes.
it.
Sounds great.
So we're coming close to the end, and I do want to leave a little bit of space. So I'm interested now about what's coming next. We've spoken just then about listening and adjusting, and we said before that the plan will need to change. Nikki, I wonder if you've got any thoughts on like adjusting in the face of adversity. Because let's imagine we do next month's forum and so, something's come up. Everyone on this call, some sort of challenge will have arisen. I wonder if, open question to the panel, anyone got any tips or thoughts on how you're going to allow for that adjustment and how you're going to bounce back and stay resilient?
So I know from my experience that when things don't always go to plan, that I have to stop, take a breath, you look up and then look out, because there is always opportunities, and you just have to be open and they will pop up. So you've got to have that open-eyed, what's there, what's around me. And then from that point, you can take a little twist, a little pivot, a little turn, and still keep going towards that end bit there. But you may have taken a wigglier road towards it. So that's what I'm doing. And that's, yeah, there's always opportunities.
Love that. By the way, we'll share a link to Nikki's website, and you'll be able to get a bit more info on exactly what she's doing next month, and maybe follow. Aidy, how about yourself? Thinking about reacting, adjusting?
I think a lot of the adjusting has happened already, right? And I think for me, it's now about maintaining that and not just saying, well, you know, we were there when we needed to be, right? Because we need to be there all the time as employers. And I think that's just so valuable to people, and especially our people. You know, Stacey, it's great to hear the things that Smyle have been doing. You know, we've been doing exactly the same. Tomorrow night we've got a cook along with Chris and Ravi, and we've got nearly 200 people cooking chicken curry, and you know, that's just incredible, right? And it's amazing to see all of these great positive things that have come out of lockdown, and that's quite hard to believe for me personally. Lockdown has been really challenging, not necessarily within the workspace, but within my personal life. The pandemic has hit close to home. So for us not to continue with all of these other wonderful positive things that have come out of this awful crisis would be complete madness, because I think some wonderful things have come out of this, and I think it's now making sure, okay, so how do we make this the new normal when we're rocking out with somebody in their living room because we've got somebody who's a great guitarist that we never knew about? You know, how can we have live lounges as a regular thing? Let's not just have it because we've been at home. So that's what we will be spending the next 4 to 6 weeks on as we approach this reset phase on the 3rd of September, to say, actually, we're going to carry on doing this. And we might, you know, supplement that with having other organisations deliver some of that for us, and some experts and professionals deliver it for us. So we're not just relying on our people. But we want our people most definitely to be involved in it, because they love it, right? They want to share their talent, and they're passionate about that.
I love that. So one of my final questions was going to be, what does the future of employee wellbeing look like? And it sounds like chicken curry. But no, Susanna, maybe we could close with your question. Actually, I think you might have preempted Aidy's response a little bit. But thinking about ensuring that the topic of wellbeing isn't just a fad, if you'd be happy to fire we'll make this the last question to the group.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, my question, I mean, obviously I have a deep interest in health and well-being, but I also have a concern that people will think, well, yeah, that was nice and that was fun, as you just said, Aidy, but let's just get back to business as normal in the interest of economics, in the interest of just moving things along. And I'm just wondering how we can avoid that. What type of steps can we put in place, or how can we demonstrate that this is actually good for business?
Stacey, would you be happy to kick off on that?
Yeah, of course. I think it kind of needs a question to step back a bit. Like, I think it's important to ask who's actually responsible for delivering the well-being of the business, who actually takes that ownership and cares for that and can really lead on it. So, for example, we have a team at Smyle and we call it Culture Club, and that's a dedicated team who focus on well-being, and the culture of the whole business, and that team is the forefront of everything that we do moving forward. So I think it's a mixture of who has that ownership and who can really lead on it. In addition, I think it's really important that once you've established that, at senior level, you get the backing, you get them in whatever initiatives that are rolled out, they're physically present. That's the only way you're going to enhance engagement and also increase that people are like, oh, this is part of our culture, like this is something that we're going to continue to do. And I think from that perspective, that's really, really great. I think also it's important to think about the question, and this may sound kind of backtracking on everything, but what is normal? So I don't think there is normal. I don't think, obviously we've been living in a world where we've gone to work and we've done this, but it's not necessarily the normal. So I think moving forward, installing these in the long term is only a great thing. I think how Aidy and I was talking about previously with our own people cooking chicken curry and Bollywood dancing and things like that, I think that's only been positive learning. So to not do that, it just makes no sense. But I think it also needs someone to actually lead on it, or someone as part of that business to actually instill that culture side of things.
Thank you, Stacey. Nikki, staying power, making things stick. We're relatively short on time, so if we could be really, really quick, that'd be incredible. on sticking at it, on making sure this lasts. And Aidy, feel free to jump in too. I've got an opinion here as well.
Oh, sorry. Did you want me to say something?
If you've got something, otherwise it's
making it last. So this is again this ultimate goal thing is that if you have a clear picture, and the company will have a clear picture of where they want to be, and you work towards it, and you have to make adjustments, and yeah, it is just having that clear picture of what it is that you want.
And Aidy, I know you've got a strategy laid out now as well. What's your thoughts on this one? Well, I think it's about making it accountable at board level, and that's something that we will most definitely be doing. In terms of physical, mental well-being, in terms of diversity and inclusion, the last 120 days has really opened our eyes across the whole of our business, and both of those topics will now be weaved and embedded in our behaviours and also our performance management. So we are going to be changing our appraisals to actually measure and give people objectives around their own well-being and diversity and inclusion. So we're measuring that constantly, and both of these subjects now have a place at the top table. They've always been there, right? Because it's the right thing to do. But actually, now let's put some meaning behind it and make people accountable for it, because then we can report on it and we can measure it and we can see improvements. And what we also need to bear in mind is to make it stick around. We all have a part to play. Absolutely. I remember early days walking into town to get a coffee, and you may have spotted the odd one or two people, and they would say morning to you. That's because we were in lockdown, which I found really bizarre that we never said morning before. And all of a sudden, I'm now going out and getting my coffees in the morning, and nobody's saying morning. So I make sure I do it because I want it to continue, because I like it. And so we have that part to play. So always, be true to yourself if you've loved it, and let it continue.
I love that. And I'll tie a bow on this as well, and we'll finish up with a little poll to finish. But I think it's the same as you would do individually. If we think about putting our own oxygen mask on first, and you being healthy and well, it starts with a vision of success. You start getting some early results with a quick approach, and then when you see results and you measure them and you see that you're making progress, then it kind of reinforces itself. I suppose the point on accountability and ownership and leadership buying into this, I think it will come down to that. Like the easier you can make your environment and path. So if you want to go on a diet, try and make sure your fridge is full of healthy food. Try and make sure you've got a cheerleader who has got your back and encourages you along the way and holds you accountable. So I think I'd approach the organisation and group in a similar way as I do the individual. Focus on getting the right people motivated, sustain it. And on that note, guys, I'm going to say a massive thank you to our panelists. Give them a little clap or emoji. Thank you very much, everyone. Right now, we've got an invitation on what comes next, because it's great that we've just had from the comments. Sounds like people have really found that useful. So thank you very much. We had some really specific tips and practical ideas in there as well. Invitation to you to take one positive action off the back of this. If there's one single thing or idea that you picked up today, maybe just take a second to write that down on a bit of paper, pen and pad, make a note of it, and try and get that ball rolling, because fundamentally the people in this room or on this call right now, like, you guys are driving this, right? And you know what I mean by that. It's hard to get other people on board, but that's part and parcel of what we're doing. If you're leading from the front, you just got to put in that bit of energy to get other people to follow. So if you want to take an action as a result of that, that'd be a successful outcome for us. I think, Marina, before we wrap up, we might have a little poll for you, and you can get in touch with us as well, guys. Marina, are we able to launch that poll? Because we've got 2 minutes and we said we'd finish.
Yes, it's already launched, and most of the people answered it.
Oh, awesome. Beautiful.
So that's great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time and for participating. Thank you to our amazing panel. It was a great session, great advice, great tips. Don't forget, we're here for you. We just launched some new sessions that can be done on just a one-session basis. They're really tailored to fit with all the feedback we've been getting from the forums. So there is a whole set of sessions that's called Life After Lockdown, specifically for managers, ones for employees. So please don't hesitate, reach out to us, and we'd love to talk well-being with you and talk about the new sessions, and if we can set something for you. Thank you.